What's going on, you guys? Today we're checking out the most hated airline in the world. It looks like Ryanair. I'm looking at the, I haven't started the video yet, but I can see in the clouds. Looks like Ryanair. Have no idea. I've never heard of this airline. I don't know if it's the most hated. Spirit Airlines is pretty damn horrible here in the States. I'm imagining this is probably like the ultra cheap version of that, coming out of Europe, maybe into, I don't know, North Africa, Asia, some area. I don't know much about it. It's coming from the channel Magnates Media. This was a recommendation. Let's just hop straight into it.
Ryanair is the largest airline in Europe, flying over 180 million passengers every year. And unlike most airlines, Ryanair offers flights for as little as $9.99. But for every passenger,
y'all get flights for $9.99? That is insane. How is that even profitable for the company?
Ryanair's cheap tickets, there's another one who has sworn never to fly with them again. Ryanair is infamous for charging ridiculous hidden fees, taking passengers to unexpected destinations, and changing their schedules at the very last minute. And if you head to their social media accounts, you'll find that instead of helping out, Ryanair often just trolls their passengers, quite literally making memes out of their complaints. There are countless horror stories about flying Ryanair, but here's where things get weird. Behind the scenes, everything Ryanair does is actually genius. Even with such low prices, they have one of the highest profit margins in the entire airline industry. Ryanair's journey from a single plane to Europe's largest airline is fascinating. So strap yourself in, because the story of Ryanair is gonna be a wild ride.
Let me explain something.
All right.
I set the rules and you follow them blindly.
No way, dude. Hold on. We gotta go. I gotta check this out. Catch flights, not fillings with Europe's favorite airline. What the fuck? Couples who use the bathroom together stay together. What the fuck? Wow, they really are trolling like hardcore. Oh my gosh. All right, let's continue with the video.
Tony Ryan began Ryanair in 1984, starting off with just a single aircraft flying from Ireland to London. However, as they tried to expand and offer more routes, the business started losing more and more money. So Tony asked his personal assistant, Michael O'Leary, to take a look at the business. And what he found was a mess of unmerciful proportions. Michael's first assessment was that Ryanair should simply shut down, because it was losing millions every year. But Tony said that wasn't an option. So Michael's next assessment was that Ryanair needed to completely restructure itself and cut down their costs by whatever means necessary. Tony trusted Michael, so he asked him to help make Ryanair profitable. They agreed a deal where instead of a salary, Michael would get 25% of any profits Ryanair made over $2 million, and Michael would lead the airline as chief executive.
That's a hell of a deal, especially with profits. I mean, they were not in profits, they were bleeding money. But if this guy actually knows what the hell he's doing, he could make a shit ton of money. To get over $2 million from an airline in profit, and he gets 25%, that's kind of nuts.
Given that Ryanair was losing millions a year, Tony doubted whether Michael would make any money at all from this deal. However, Michael realized that trying to offer a better service than the more established airlines was not the right option. And so the first thing Michael did was head over to America to check out Southwest Airlines, a company that was charging as little as $10 for some of their flights. Michael wanted to study
When is this? Back in like 1990? Southwest it's an okay airline. It's like really basic. No TVs, no outlets, just get on, no assigned seating, find a seat and fly.
Their process and figure out how they were offering fares so cheaply. And he was hugely impressed with what he saw. Michael compared Southwest operations to a McDonald's. Every process, from checking the plane before a flight, to boarding the passengers, to the in-flight services, was optimized to increase efficiency and decrease operating costs. When he returned from the US, Michael was inspired and vowed he was going to turn Ryanair into an ultra low-cost airline that offered customers rock-bottom prices. However, many questioned, with rock-bottom prices, how was Ryanair ever going to turn a profit? Well, Michael had a plan for that, and the best way to see it in action is for us to take a flight with Ryanair.
Okay.
As with all flights, it starts when a customer buys a ticket. But you can only buy Ryanair tickets online. That way, the process is streamlined and they cut out travel agencies taking a commission. Ryanair's tickets are especially cheap, but that's because customers are really only paying for a random seat on the plane. If you want to choose a seat so you can sit next to who you're traveling with, that's extra. And if you want to take any luggage other than a backpack, that's extra too.
Yep.
And these extra charges often amount to more than the ticket itself. Ryanair saves tons of money this way because most governments tax airlines on the airfare, but not the add-ons. Not just that, it means Ryanair are always going to be at the top of price comparison searches, as they're sorted based on ticket price, not including the extra hidden costs. Now, when you're booking your tickets, make sure you don't fill in any of your details incorrectly, as Ryanair can sometimes charge over €100 to make any changes. Articles have pointed out that it is cheaper to legally change your name and passport than to change names on Ryanair tickets. When you arrive at the airport, Ryanair saves on staff costs too by not having any check-in desks, and they'll charge a hefty fee to anyone that forgets to check in online. After this, the passengers head to the gate, which might be inconveniently far away. Airports charge airlines less for using certain gates, and Ryanair always takes the cheapest ones. Next, the passengers head onto the plane, but instead of using a skybridge, Ryanair makes them take a bus and walk up the stairs, because again, it's cheaper. Once inside, the passengers will see that there's...
Does the airport charge for the skybridge for you to walk across?
no first class on Ryanair, because having only one type of seat streamlines the cleanup process after the flight. You'll also notice that the plane is absolutely crammed with passengers. Ryanair uses mostly Boeing 737s, which typically seat around 170 passengers, but Ryanair stuff around 200 in the same space, the max that regulations allow.
No leg room.
This means you won't have much leg room, and to make the...
Yeah, you got your knees in your chest, right? Oh man, just thinking of flying on an airline like this. I'll probably fly a Ryanair when I come to Europe as well, because I'm gonna be looking for cheap flights. I'll have to keep in mind that they do charge for literally everything. But man, when you're on those flights and you have no leg room, especially when it's over 4 hours, oh man.
Things worse, the seats can't be reclined. That's because these are the cheapest seats for Ryanair to buy and maintain. It also means some of their window seats don't have a window at all. In the case of seat 11A, this is what you're getting. Next up, the flight attendants give a safety brief. But instead of your typical safety brochure, the information is printed on the back of the seat's headrest. This way, there's no need for pockets on the back of the seats, which makes cleaning up way faster. And usually it's the flight attendants who do the cleaning themselves, which dramatically reduces Ryanair's staff bill.
Our people are our most important asset. No, they're our biggest expense.
Then the pilot introduces himself over the speakers, but they're probably not a Ryanair employee. Instead of hiring pilots the traditional way, Ryanair makes them start their own companies in Ireland, and then hires them as contractors.
No friggin' way. This is what they're doing to get costs down? I mean, yeah, it's going to be cheaper. I just can't believe they actually went forward and did it.
This way, they can avoid paying for health insurance or severance. Once the plane takes off, passengers will notice that there's no in-flight internet or screens to watch movies on. That's an unnecessary cost. And if you want any food mid-flight, or even just a glass of water, you're gonna have to pay. Nothing on the plane is free. So Ryanair turns what is an expense for other airlines into another revenue stream. You won't be waiting long though. The average Ryanair flight is just over 2 hours. This is optimal for fuel efficiency, and it also means a single plane can make upwards of 6 trips every day, which drives up Ryanair's revenue. But when the passengers land, they might find they're further away from their destination than they hoped. Ryanair usually flies to secondary airports outside big cities, as they charge much lower landing and takeoff fees. For example, the Ryanair ticket may say London, but instead of flying to one of the main airports like Heathrow, Ryanair may go to Luton, which is not even in London. Or in Barcelona, Ryanair uses an airport that's around 50 miles away from the city and requires an hour-and-a-half bus ride. It's less convenient for customers, but Ryanair gets much bigger discounts from the airports. And many of these smaller airports become dependent on Ryanair for business, and so they give them incredible prices. Or another way Ryanair gets discounts from airports is they'll just fly at the least popular times. Finally, once the passengers have left...
It's actually, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of genius what they're doing, and also really fucked at the same time. Like, someone like me would have no idea. If I booked a ticket and it was like Barcelona and I saw it from London to Barcelona, I'd be like, oh, we're going to Barcelona. I'm sure I would figure out how far away it was from my hotel, but still, you know, it'd be like, I guess this is the airport. Why is it so far away? Someone like me wouldn't know at all, but
Ryanair begins unloading the plane, cleaning it, refueling it, and rotating the crew. This takes most airlines ages, but Ryanair has streamlined all these systems, so their planes are typically on the ground for just 30 minutes between flights. And so that's a typical Ryanair flight, and it's clear their operations are incredibly efficient to cut costs in every way possible. However, this sometimes means doing things that may seem counterintuitive. For example, you may think another way for Ryanair to lower their costs would be to buy older planes for lower prices, but in reality, they do the exact opposite. Ryanair always buys the newest planes available, because long term, they waste the least amount of fuel, which is one of the largest expenses for an airline. In fact, Ryanair is notorious for making massive orders of only Boeing 737s. By buying a single model in bulk, they can negotiate a lower average price per plane, and then streamline their whole operation further, because by only using one kind of plane, it means they only have to buy one kind of seat and one kind of fuel. They only have to train one kind of crew on one kind of process. These ultra-efficient strategies are why Ryanair can charge less than €30 for their average flight, and still clear an outrageous profit margin of around 35% sometimes.
I mean, if I only have a backpack on me and I'm going from one place to another, this does seem like the best airline that you could possibly fly on. Now, I know if you are carrying more like luggage, you're probably going to end up paying the same, right? That's how it is. Like, I flew Spirit Airlines, which is probably similar. Actually, it's probably way worse than Ryanair here in the States. Me and my wife flew it one time, like a decade ago, and booked the tickets really cheap. We were pumped. Got there, one bag was overweight because their weight limits were different than other airlines, and we had to check the bag, and it was like $100 or something like that. It absolutely pissed me off.
Most European airlines are lucky to reach 6%, and the global average was barely 2.7%.
Everybody looks at Ryanair and they're all looking at it. There's one secret. There's, they bought planes cheaply, or they just treat people badly, or they do. Every single line of our operation is smarter, lower cost, or more efficient than almost every other line.
Some other airlines have now copied some of these strategies after seeing how well they worked, but very few airlines take things as far as Ryanair. However, whilst these ruthless cost-cutting strategies might be brilliant in a business sense, they have made Ryanair one of the most hated airlines in the world. And Ryanair's response to this is far from ordinary.
They said, fuck you. We're doing it anyway.
Before we get to the next chapter, it's time to answer a question I get a lot. How do I make these videos? Well, a big part of that is down to today's sponsor, Storyblocks, a curated stock library with everything you need to create high-quality video all in one place. I've been using Storyblocks to help make my videos for years now, and it has over 1 million 4K and HD video. People say you create cinematic clips. Honestly, it's and unlimited download. So to get started with unlimited stock, link in the description. Michael O'Leary, Ryanair's CEO, has often made the news for some of his wild ideas about how Ryanair could cut costs even further. He said he wanted to charge passengers to use the bathroom, remove toilets completely to add more seats, introduce a fat tax, and even...
It's too much. Remove bathrooms? I'm literally speechless. How do you remove bathrooms off an airplane? There's got to be like some type of law against that, right?
Cut costs even further. He said he wanted to charge passengers to use the bathroom, remove toilets completely to add more seats, introduce a fat tax, and even sell standing tickets.
Fat tax.
He pointed out these measures would allow Ryanair to offer cheaper flights, which is ultimately what consumers want. And in some cases, there may be some logic to it.
It would make perfect sense to me to charge for toilet access. One, it would reduce the number of people who are bothering other passengers getting up and down going to the toilet on board.
I'm not gonna lie. I think the charging for the bathroom, I just don't think it would ever be a good idea. But I totally get it. You guys ever been on an airplane and someone gets up, it'll be like a 2-hour flight, and that one woman like right across from you gets up and goes to the bathroom like 5 times in a 2-hour flight, and you're like, just stay in there. Like, what are you doing? I try and go to the bathroom the least amount on an airplane as I can.
The number of people who are bothering other passengers getting up and down going to the toilet on board flight. And two, I think we'd have fewer passengers using the toilets, and then we'd have less people queuing around the toilets on board the aircraft.
None of these ideas have actually happened though, and Michael later
No.
said he'd often just say things they had no intention of actually doing to help generate free marketing.
And we generated huge amounts of free publicity. Why? Because we had no money for advertising, we had no money for PR. So you needed some kind of loudmouth Paddy to be out there saying outrageous things like charging for toilets, yeah, and we're taking out the seats in the standing room only. None of which we actually planned to do, but it generated acres and acres of free publicity.
Ryanair saved a fortune on marketing by simply having Michael do interviews and say outlandish things to get headlines, which always led to more people checking out Ryanair's website and buying tickets. For example, when he was questioned why passengers are charged €20 just to print their boarding passes at the airport, Michael replied, "Well, I think they should pay €60 for being so stupid." He also said,
Oh my god. I'm kind of starting to like this guy a little bit.
"Well, I think they should pay €60 for being so stupid." He also said, if drink sales are falling off, we get the pilots to engineer a bit of turbulence. That usually spikes drink sales. Another way Michael helped Ryanair get free marketing was with creative promotions designed to get maximum attention.
We used one of our first best ones was we did this Valentine's Day promotion, which was 69 for 2.
However,
Hilarious.
not everyone sees the
Fantastic.
funny side. You'll find plenty of Ryanair
Really?
horror stories and tens of thousands of one-star reviews. Some newspapers started having an entire column dedicated to Ryanair complaints as there were so many.
The crazy thing is these people, and I'm sure probably some of you have maybe left a 1-star on Ryanair before. You'll leave a 1-star, but when it comes down to it, they will purchase the ticket if it's cheap enough. It's just true. It'll happen.
Like a woman who was charged €300 for Ryanair to print out her boarding pass. But Michael has openly stated he feels customers paying cheap airfares have no right to complain when things go wrong. He said, "We don't want to hear your sob stories. What part of no refund don't you understand?"
Dude,
Another
this guy is
example was when
crazy.
hundreds of passengers were forced to spend the night at the airport after their flight was cancelled, and many asked if Ryanair would provide accommodation. Michael said,
Nope.
Absolutely not. You booked a flight, not a hotel." One of their most controversial policies was forcing the disabled to pay up to €25 for the use of a wheelchair. One lady said,
Oh, that's kind of fucked up. All right. I'm not on board with that. Although, there's always a but with these. Is it I saw this on the news the other day. It was like, maybe it wasn't the news. I was just scrolling through X or TikTok or something. And Indians apparently all request wheelchairs. And there was like a massive line of, I kid you not, like 50 Indians all in wheelchairs. Not even people that need wheelchairs. Like they just request the wheelchair so that they can get pushed around the airport. And, you know, I have no idea how many Indians actually do that, but the video was there. The proof was in the pudding. So yeah, I mean, you can't charge people for wheelchairs, but I kind of get how some people take advantage of it a little bit.
said, "Despite booking wheelchair assistance, I had to ask a fellow passenger to push me to the departure gate. And upon my return, I sat for an hour waiting for assistance on the plane, getting colder and colder." Almost any other company would
Yeah,
offer
that's not
goodwill
cool.
gestures when things like this happen. But instead, Ryanair takes a different approach. When you go to Ryanair's social media, you'll find that instead of helping out, they're making memes from their passengers' complaints. For example, when passengers complain they paid
This
for a
is
seat
wild
but
work.
didn't get a window, Ryanair simply responds, "Read that again but slowly. You paid for a seat." Another asked them where their window was, and Ryanair replied, "Pay for the baggage you've stored under your jumper, and then we can talk." One of their most viral posts was when a customer complained
my
about the
God.
very narrow stairs Ryanair used, and said, "I'll bring my own stairs next time." But Ryanair responded, "Bring your own plane next time." Some people questioned, should a company be
Jesus.
responding this way instead of apologizing? But another said, they charged extra for everything except Twitter roasts. No regular airline would ever do this, but in Ryanair's case, it's actually a genius strategy. Ryanair has millions of
really
followers, and their troll posts regularly go viral, which directly leads to more ticket sales. They've embraced their reputation of being stingy, as it means everyone thinks of them as the low-cost airline. And as a result of all these strategies, Ryanair carries far more passengers than any other airline in Europe. Their typical airfare goes for less than €30, and they've sold flights for as little as €4.99. They might not treat you like royalty, but they're pretty honest about what they are. Love them or hate them.
I'll be completely honest. If I bought an airline ticket for $12.99 and there was no window, I definitely would not be tweeting at them. Am I like, we gotta start doing these videos live so I can hear you guys talk back to me while I'm reacting to this, because that just seems like crazy work to be complaining that there's no window when you paid like 2 cups of coffee. Well, I don't know how much coffee is, but I'm guessing with the way coffee rates are now, a couple of cups of coffee for an airline ticket and you didn't get a
They've
window.
given people the option to fly all over Europe at prices that are often cheaper than train tickets. So there's no doubt they've made air travel affordable for millions of people. However, remember how Michael compared their efficiency to McDonald's? Well, that's because McDonald's pioneered something called the Speedy Service System, which is genius.
I already know about it. I've done all the research into McDonald's in the past. You guys ever seen the movie The Founder? It was pretty entertaining, really good. All right, thanks for the recommendation, you guys. That was surprisingly really funny, and I just kind of threw me for a win there. I wasn't really expecting what I just watched, but entertaining to say the least. Smash like button on your way out, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.